there's a connection with Korean culture, or
there is a connection, I think, but I think it's not so easy. It's not so clear. One of the first things I noticed was that of the great big tombs that they excavated, one was square and made like a Koguryo tomb, or so it seemed to me. The jades inside are not like anything they have in Korea. The connection is distant, but I didn't think it was impossible. And what I had worked on was early Neolithic, and this is late Neolithic, so the time is much later than where I had been working in Korea. But I thought it was something worth exploring. And I can't say I have found close connections, but I do think there are good reasons to believe that Korean ancestors came from that region. Even later than Hong Shan, there's Bronze Age material that you find the same things in Korea. So by that time, the connection is quite clear. So it's a tentative connection. It's not. Oh yes, here we have a piece of pottery that looks exactly like Korean pottery. We don't. The pottery is mostly painted, and the painted pottery almost never turns up in Korea. So, but I did a study of the earlier sites, the earlier than Hong Shan sites in the Dongbei, and there's a big, really close connections with those earlier sites between that. It's not Hong Shan yet. Hong Shan comes along. It's pre-Hong Shan, but the sites their pottery is very similar. Their houses are similar. The way they put a hearth in the middle, but made out of square stones. So, of the things we can find and see, there are connections with Korea, and it's reasonable to my mind anyway. It's reasonable to suppose that people from there migrated into Korea and took with them the raising of millets and beans and other things that they raised, and that knowledge went with them, including making pots. But that was very early. I'm imagining this as being Neolithic period. So at the time of Amsadong, they have relatives up there in the northeast. And then what happens is you get some different things that happen in different places. So you have, in the Hong Shan culture, you begin to get some kind of stratified society. It's very clear that there are some people who are much more important than other people, and they get buried with these beautifully crafted jades. There has to be some kind of societal support to allow people to be that kind of artisans. There's just many indications that this is beginning to be a ranked society, not actually stratified. So it's going its own way. Some of that then, and I haven't been able to follow this through yet. We have a project we're working on this very thing, trying to understand it, but I can't give you very many specifics. But I think then when you begin to get the other ranked societies appearing, making cities and so forth, at Puyo first, Koguryo and so forth, I think you're getting relationships. Those are people who might have lived in Northeast China and moved out. They might be people who have become associated with them and are traded with them and take on some of their traits. They don't really know. We're trying to look into the language and the genetics of the relationships between Manchuria, Northeast China, and Korea, and they're strong and they're there. But exactly, we haven't pinpointed them yet. So there's a lot of work to be done.
Is that in the upcoming part of your upcoming trip in October?
No, that's just a reconnaissance kind of a of a trip. I'm going to collect some more. They've done a lot of new work on Pekchi. I've been writing a book on Shilla, and have pretty much up to date, I think, on what's been found in the Shilla region. And Shilla is a different kind of connection, but also a connection with the Dongbei. Very clearly, very clearly connected to the Muram Shunde sites. There are two groups of named Shunde in the Chinese material. So I didn't know the Chinese material at all, the histories and so forth. So I'm having to really research that and look into it and try to understand it. But there are little threads that are not much yet. They're not strong ropes to tie it. Little threads that do tie the Kim family of Korea, of Shilla, to the Dongbei. And I do think that they're related. To me, and it's probably, excuse me, too soon, my eyes are now watering, it seems to me that the Kim family suddenly arrives in Yeongju, and they arrive because there's gold there, and they recognize the gold. There's been gold there all along, but nobody has paid much attention to it, or they don't know how to work it, or who knows. But anyway, there's gold, but it's not. I think it's probably, and so have other archaeologists said this, that it's probably placer gold. It's gold that's come down from the mountains and the streams, and in order to find it, you have to pick up the rocks and get underneath it and find the pieces of gold. So here comes this family whose name is Gold, who settles down, and they come from Manchuria. They have horses, they have all kinds of things. The horses have been there before, but where we can begin to really see horse travelers in Shilla is right then with
Arrival of the Kim.
the arrival of the Kims. And by 3 or 4 generations, they are conquering Kaya, various Kaya groups, and they are sort of moved in and said, we're the boss now. And they make all this beautiful gold jewelry, and they bury it with their people, and they gold crowns and all of that. And another thing that ties them to the Dongbei is the Silk Road. They have obviously been trading beautiful things, and they have something to trade back, which is, of course, their gold jewelry. So this is what I've been looking at recently. I think they're also shamans, and I also think we know that one of them is a queen with the most beautiful crown that was ever found. And so women are, in many cultures, and especially in Korean culture, considered to be closer to the spirits than men are. So if a shaman is a leader, then a shaman is a woman, then women are leaders. And here we have in Shilla the crown to show it. And a belt. The crown and the belt belong to royalty. So I've also looked at possible ancestors at that age level, that time period in Korea and in Northeast China. And there you have very strong women and rulers, and the Mongols had women. I'm not sure they would have called them queens, but they certainly had women who led armies and who were equal to men. They were not subordinate little nice girls who baked cookies, as we say, served tea. So presumably then the ancestors of the family that's just moved into Korea to move it along and and of course, in the meantime, you have Goguryeo is already formed and Baekji, so you have all kinds of other things happening. Kaya, yeah, I mean, the whole area is becoming stratified societies. But there's something different about what's happening in Shilla than the other places. I think, however, when I study Baekji and Goguryeo within more depth, I will see the same kind of thing, only with a different story. I think it's there. And as I may have started to say before, one of the things that really attracted me to the Hong Shan culture was the square tomb, which most tombs are around. And there was a tomb that was square, and that's so Goguryeo, which is, of course, way later. It won't do for a really direct connection, but it's a teaser. It's a feeling that there must be something there that we could follow. So much of that area is just beginning to be explored archaeologically. We have so much to learn that there may be all kinds of connections waiting to be found, or not. I mean, we can't assume ahead of time that they're there. But I think when we have a better look at some of the Liaoning province forts that belong to Goguryeo, were part of the Goguryeo expansion, and begin to think about it in these kinds of ways, I think we'll see perhaps more
connections, maybe.
Yeah. So I think there's a lot of work to be done. I won't live long enough to see it all, but I'm going to try.
It definitely sounds like the adventure is ongoing and as exciting too.
It is exciting. It's a very interesting thing. And among many of the things I explored when I was just trying to learn about the archaeology, was a lot of Koreans had written things that I could either sort of translate, or they then, thank goodness, translated in English, about the Korean relationship to the Dongyi. And so I didn't know anything about the Dongyi at the time. I didn't know anything about Chinese archaeology. So it took a lot of back and forth with the Korean material and the Chinese material to even begin to get a handle on it. And I don't think I do yet. But I do think there's a lot to learn, and that it's really an area that's worth exploring. So, it's not too much.
You want to take a quick break, or?
Well, no. So you want to move on?
Okay, sure. Let's see. Do you think you could discuss a role of Hong Shan culture in what role it might have in the historical memories of China, Japan, and Korea?
You know, that's really a hard one to consider about historical memories, because I can tell you what they didn't pass on was jade, and what happened somewhere along the line was jade, which was so important in the Dongbei and in other parts of China, mostly along the eastern coast. So the Dongyi people were really into jades, and somehow this got transmitted into having gold with the purple stuff. And part of it is that the jade isn't in Korea. They found a little bit of jade in Korea, but not very much. So there wasn't enough to make the kind, and not high quality jade, such as the Hong Shan jades are made of. So somehow the very thing that they were hanging their religion on, in a way, the jades are very religious, I think. It's, of course, only a guess, but so that translation doesn't. Something different has happened by the time you get to Korea, and the valuing is different. Now, part of what's different may be, in fact, the trade routes. So the gold is a big deal to the people across Central Asia, and it's not such a big deal down in China. But the trading is mostly across Central Asia. The trading is not mostly in China. So I think you're getting a kind of a Central Asian strain into there that's not Chinese. Well, actually, I don't think the whole Dongbei is at all Chinese at that time. It's simply, it's within what is now China, but it wasn't Chinese. They didn't, what language, we don't know what language they spoke, but linguists guess that it's some form that's a relative, an ancestor of both Turkish and Korean. Altaic, yeah. The I don't know, linguists that I've talked to are not so thrilled with the very idea of Altaic anymore. I mean, they get very picky about these things. So, one linguist friends of mine just speaks of Koreanic and Japonic as languages that may have been spoken in that area. So she has a big project, and I shouldn't be talking about her project, but anyway, another very exciting project that I hope will turn up.
Is it a linguist friend at the university here, or is?
No, she is in Germany. So we find each other. Thank goodness for the internet. We do find each other that way, and or make connections that way, and it's really nice. She was at the meeting at Harvard, so she's I think, very brilliant and interesting person. But I'm just an advisor to her project, so it's not mine. I can't talk about it.
Fair enough.
Anyway.
Do you think you could give us somewhat of an overview of archaeological evidence of religious and spiritual practice found at the Hong Shan sites?
Well, things that it's always a matter of interpretation. The things that I think can be interpreted as religious include especially the long, oddly shaped building that the Chinese have called the Goddess Temple. And inside it, not much was left of it, so a meter maybe of foundation. But there were very fancy foundations, painted and decorated, and so this was a very special building, and inside and out. And inside were these pieces of statues that were found of unbaked clay. These are some of the earliest full-size human statues in the world. So, pretty amazing. And to find this face that was still all together, it was amazing. She didn't have her nose. They had to find her nose somewhere else and put it back on. But other than that, I mean, it's quite astonishing. Why would people make a life-size statue of a woman, or several women, and pieces of a pig, and pieces of a dragon or a bird, or who knows what? I mean, what is all that about? And although I've imagined what it might be about in my little novel, I nevertheless think it very reasonably has to be somehow associated with the spiritual world. That this is a spiritual place. It has spiritual meaning. Whether I've guessed right about what those spiritual meanings are is probably not right, but that's one way to put it all together. Is to imagine that this was a live woman who was really a leader, that she had a bird and a pig, and that they were also somehow part of it. And that she was a leader because she was very smart, and because she was a shaman, because she was in touch with the spirits. And that kind of leadership, I think, was probably the first kind of leadership in the world. And so rather than being a leadership of armies, there's no evidence of warfare at Halian itself or in Hong Shan at all, as far as I know. Other people have taken over doing big surveys all around Hong Shan and so forth. But they don't find any evidence of warfare of any kind. There are no wells with bodies stuffed in them, and there are no walls around things. It's a peaceful time, run by spiritual beliefs.